What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the Dayton Triangles franchise here on Madden 25. We finished year number 4 with our deepest playoff run of this series, but unfortunately for us though, we do end up falling just short as we end up losing to the Philadelphia Stars 41-34 in what ends up being an absolute shootout of the ages. But now we come into this offseason with a goal in mind. What can we do in this episode that's going to ultimately help us get over the top and take us to that UFL championship and get some respect on our names, win our first championship with this Dayton franchise. So that's what we plan on doing here in this episode, as well as so much more. So hopefully you guys stick around for the entire off-season episode here today. And if you guys are excited as well, make sure you go ahead and do a couple of things for me. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. And with that being said, let's go ahead and roll right into this thing. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at how things went this season, and it was truly a remarkable season. Finishing 13-4 is certainly nothing to scoff at, and while we didn't finish with the best overall record in the league, we did finish as the second best team in the league overall. So we're very happy that we were able to accomplish all of that. I wasn't sure if we had really that special of a team, and it really wasn't until about week 5 that I really felt that we had something special going. This is when we came out, we blew out Seattle, and we also blew out the Evansville Thunderbolts within our division as well. That's when I knew, like, hey, I think we are going to have a really special football team. And that was evident as we played through the rest of this season, you know, winning countless games in a variety of ways. Now, we didn't always have our best performances. We did lose to San Antonio in the regular season, but we will get our bounce back moment. And then we did also get blown out by Boston as well, but we got our get back against them as well. But still, 13-4 is an incredible regular season. And then in the postseason, you know, blew out the DC Defenders in the playoffs. Also blew out Boston, beat San Antonio close, just could not stop the Philadelphia Stars offense when we really needed to the most, but really was a special season for the our Dayton Triangles. But now we try to figure out, you know, what can we do to get over the top. We were so close. We got a taste of really that championship atmosphere, but I really want to go for it all this upcoming season. Taking a quick look around the league though to go ahead and see who ends up like winning like various MVP league awards. So Logan Perkins of the San Diego Fleet does end up winning the league MVP, but DeClean O'Donnell's was also a runner-up for this very award, and this is one of your custom guys as well. For the Coach of the Year, Brian Callahan does get named Coach of the Year from the San Antonio Brahmas, but our coach that we have, we did take over for Zach Taylor. He ends up finishing in 3rd for that Coach of the Year honors. And then in our conference specifically, we do have an Offensive Player of the Year in Bryce Emmons, who plays for the Houston Roughnecks. DeClean O'Donnell's does finish 4th for this particular award, even though he was 2nd in the league in the MVP voting. Defensive Player of the Year does end up going to Daryl Forsett of the Birmingham Stallions. He does move on to the NFL, so we will not see Daryl Forsett in this file for next season. However, we will see him hanging out with the New York Giants, if you guys seen for what happened a couple of episodes ago. So he is now a member of the NFL. We do, however, end up seeing Cameron Spencer make this list, though. He ends up finishing 8th for that Defensive Player of the Year voting. As for the Offensive Rookie of the Year, it ends up going to Justin Credible, who is a rookie wide receiver, was selected in the top 5 for the Orlando Guardians. So a great season for Justin Credible for sure. But one of our late round draft picks actually did end up making on this Offensive Rookie of the Year list. And it actually was Mitch Woodson, who really came on late in the season, really helped us out with the playoff run as well. Was able to finish 10th for that Offensive Rookie of the Year. And so for somebody that was a day 3 draft pick for us, that's really spectacular. Meanwhile, as for the Defensive Rookie of the Year, it's going to go to Bryce McGee of the Boston Mariners. But a couple of your guys' like custom players did also end up making this list as well. Mabul Sukan is finishing third in terms of that Defensive Player of the Year list. He is someone that is going to be on the like the Salt Lake City Condors and was a rookie corner for the Salt Lake City Condors squad. We do also have another one of your custom guys that did end up making this list as well, in Nas Evans, who is a part of our team. He was a second-round pick for us in the previous offseason, and ends up finishing 5th in terms of that Defensive Rookie of the Year list. So with that being said, hopefully that helps with that development trait, even though we haven't fully discovered it yet. Meanwhile, for best quarterback, that is going to go to Logan Perkins, who also wins the MVP, with the Queen O'Donnell's finishing in 3rd place. Andrew Collar, who actually does end up getting signed by the Houston Texans, he actually finishes down in 7th within the UFL, within the conference, which is really interesting to me. But the Houston Texans are certainly high on his traits, which is why he got an NFL opportunity above many of these other people that are above Andrew Collar. Best running back is going to be provided to Jonathan McGriff. That is one of our guys, was towards the top of the league in rushing, so we're happy to see Jonathan McGriff win the best running back award. Best wide receiver goes to Bryce Edmonds, who wins the Offensive Player of the Year. But one of your guys' receivers, in none other than Leon Thomas, ends up finishing in 7th. We should have him back for next season. Best offensive line does go to Richard Gaffney. That's one of our offensive linemen, but he was not the only offensive lineman on our team that did manage to get on this list, as Kenny Beekman and Barry Alfman were also signed in this top 10 as well. So we certainly had one of the best offensive lines in the league, and that certainly shows here. Best defensive line goes to Darrell Forsett, who again, is going to be a member of the New York Giants. However, one of our players did end up on this list as well, in Matt Weaver. And Matt Weaver is also moving on to the NFL. He was signed by the Carolina Panthers, so he will not be on our team next season. Best linebacker is going to go to Cameron Spencer, but we had a few other linebackers that finished in the top 10 actually, which I found really interesting. Paul Hitchens, who we brought in as a free agent acquisition, he's really popped for us. He is number 8 as a best linebacker in the league, which is really awesome. And then JJ Peters, one of your guys' customs, and is receiving some NFL interest, but for now is staying in the UFL. He finishes 10th on this list. Best DB goes to Jacoby Charles of the San Diego Fleet. But one of our guys also finished in the top 10 here as well, in Ty Moody, who ultimately ends up finishing in 9th place, and he will be our CB1 from an overall standpoint. Now that we see Peter Townsend, who's also on the team, he is also going to be part of the Carolina Panthers as well. So the next thing that I wanted to go ahead and do is take a look at what the season stats are, like for our guys specifically. But before I went ahead and did that, I wanted to take a quick look at who like the league leaders were in terms of various categories. So like 2 places of note here, Declan O'Donnell's, who's one of your guys' customs, did end up leading the league in passing yards. He threw for 4,700 yards and 40 touchdowns, as well as had an extremely high completion percentage as well. Finished with a 71% completion percentage, so he was a certified baller over the course of this season. But Jonathan McGriff was a huge impact in terms of leading the league in rushing. We had that ground and pound mindset, and we did extremely well with it. He ran for 1,400 yards during the regular season and finished with 11 touchdowns, so that free agent acquisition seemed to have worked extremely well for us, and he actually cleared anybody else in terms of rushing yards by over 300 yards, which is a pretty significant gap, honestly, which I'm extremely happy about. As for a deeper dive in terms of what we got going on, Andrew Collar was our main quarterback this season. He had a solid season, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, took extremely good care of the football, and those 9 interceptions was honestly skewed. I mean, there was times, I know specifically in the Boston game, where he threw for like 3 or 4 interceptions. So the fact that he almost had that many turnovers in that specific game and kept his turnover numbers under 10 interceptions for the whole season, I'm extremely happy about. He also threw for almost 3,500 yards, had a 63% completion percentage. Just someone that really did a good job in terms of making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. But we will have a new starting quarterback for next season because Andrew Collar is leaving to be one of the quarterbacks on the Houston Texans. He's going to at least be a camp arm. Marvin Whitfield is looking to be our new starting quarterback going forward. We saw him play towards the end of the regular season, and then also we saw him play, of course, in that UFL championship game against the Philadelphia Stars. And listen, I liked what I saw from Marvin Whitfield overall. Seems like he's a solid passer, and not to mention has a little bit more mobility than what Andrew Collar can provide for us. In the one regular season game, he did throw for 3 touchdowns and 200 yards, but had a couple of interceptions. But it did lead to a win in the regular season finale against the Memphis Showboats in the UFL championship game, which is the other game that he started in. Listen, he led an offense that scored over 30 points. It was not his fault that we lost the UFL championship game. So I think we certainly still have a quarterback that we can win a UFL championship with, even though he's not the same caliber of player that Andrew Collar is. Now, in terms of rushing, obviously Jonathan McGriff was a huge story over the course of the season, but Andrew Collar was our second rusher. He is the only other person that did wind up with multiple rushing touchdowns aside from Jonathan McGriff. He also ran for over 200 yards this season. The only other person that had more than 100 yards was Heath Whitehead, who did have 130 yards and a touchdown over the course of the year. Joe Spears also found the end zone as well, but he's more of a special team, like kick return specialist, while Heath Whitehead will be expected to be more of that firm running back too, as we progress in the next season. For the receiving game, we actually did not have any receivers clips 1,000 yards over the course of the season, but what I will say though is that we certainly have like an emerging wide receiver 2, which I think is going to be really helpful moving forward. Leon Thomas is obviously going to be wide receiver 1, right? So he had over 900 yards, 11 touchdowns. No one's disputing that. At first, Will Hunter was that wide receiver 2, and he had a good season, almost 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, but he did most of that in the first half of the season. But then as we transitioned into the second half of the year, that was when we really saw more of DeAndre Bazier. He really stepped up in that second half of the season, ended up with more snaps than Will Hunter as well, and ends up putting up more receiving yards than Will Hunter. So I expect DeAndre Bazier to be that firm wide receiver 2 moving forward. Other things of note here, Grayson Heineck had 4 touchdowns and 586 receiving yards. Just a really nice tight end to have, but we have so many good weapons that it just gets to a point where, you can only feed somebody so much. So that's just something to note there. Jonathan McGriff didn't find the end zone, but had nearly 300 yards receiving. Champ Johnson, the third-year player out of Mississippi Valley State, the Delta Devils product, did finish with 3 touchdowns off of 10 catches. And then Mitch Woodson did have a few catches in the regular season, but made more of an impact, I would say, in the playoffs, which is not necessarily reflected here. But Mitch Woodson, definitely somebody to watch for as we progress in through the offseason. Now, defensively, we did have only one person with more than 100 tackles this season, and that actually was Paul Hitchens, who ends up with 113 tackles, most of whom were solo tackles. Ty Moody was actually surprisingly not too far behind. He had 88 tackles himself, but your rest of your top 5 does include a Denario Allen, who did spend some time up in the box alongside Jordan Baptiste and JJ Peters as well. We did also have Cameron Spencer end up winning being considered one of the best linebackers in the league. He was actually the only player on the team that had more than 10 sacks, but there was a couple guys that were really close Matt Weaver, who is moving on to the NFL, he is playing for the Carolina Panthers, like I mentioned. And then Greg Sharp has also really emerged as well. Greg Sharp has really developed extremely nicely. Definitely could have a breakout season next year. He had 9 sacks in what felt like, somewhat limited playing time, which is really good to see. Very encouraged by that kind of development. JJ Peters also at 3.5 sacks, and then our second round rookie Nas Evans, who finished in the rookie of the year race, he ends up with a couple of sacks as well. Another thing that I felt that we really improved on as well is our ability to force turnovers. And oh baby, did we force some turnovers this season, particularly, getting some interceptions. Multiple guys had multiple picks this year, but mainly JJ Peters. JJ Peters is coming back next season. He had 4 interceptions, and that does end up leading our team, which is really good to see. Peter Townsend, who is now a member of the Carolina Panthers, he managed to get 3 interceptions. Jared Strong, who could be a very important piece for us next year. He's listed as our CB2 right now. He also had 3 interceptions as well. And then Ty Moody, Jordan Baptiste, Niles Cotton. Those were all guys that had multiple interceptions as well. Then Paul Hedges and Denario Allen were able to get a turnover as well. Surprisingly, we only forced 1 fumble over the course of the regular season, and that fumble was forced by Jordan Baptiste. But somehow we managed with multiple fumble recoveries, so I'm not sure how that works, but Matt Weaver and Cameron Means were both able to get fumble recoveries. Cameron Means, speaking of which, did end up blocking a punt. I believe it happened in the Seattle Sea Dragons game, and it did end up winding up for a defensive touchdown. We also had 2 other defensive touchdowns, both from Peter Townsend, courtesy of those pick 6 that he had during the course of the regular season. So we move on deeper into the offseason, and we do have some players that are going to get upgraded here. These are primarily guys that were on our practice squad. So first, we are going to improve Joe Kilmer's agility abilities, just something that I really wanted to develop with him. And after working those upgrades, he does get 1 overall boost. He does get carried up to a 66 overall. Casey Jacobs is another offensive lineman that we are trying to develop, for depth purposes. And so we're going to go ahead and work on that pass protector. And that first upgrade actually gives him a couple of overalls, which I'm extremely encouraged about. We do it one more time, and he gets 1 more overall boost. Just ones across the board, but he goes from being like a 65 overall to a 68. So some very good progress being made on Casey Jacobs as well. Forrest Joseph is another guy that I wanted to try and develop as well, because with the departure of Matt Weaver, we are looking thin on the interior defensive line, and that definitely showed in that UFL championship game. Starting edge rushers in our interior really showed in terms of our ability to get to the quarterback. So we're gonna go ahead and improve Forrest Joseph, and he jumps up to a 69 overall, which is pretty nice in my opinion. Should at least make him somewhat competent. If he can develop properly, he can be a decent defensive tackle too, to be next to Daryl McLeod. Meanwhile, George Hendricks is someone that we are trying to work on to build behind Nick Cotton, as well as Daryl Underwood as well. He has multiple upgrades, so we're just going to work on the scheme fits for right now. It gets a +2 to play recognition, and then he gets another overall boost as well, which carries him up to a 65. Also getting upgrades is Greg Ballard. Yes, another defensive tackle. Just trying to have some kind of depth here. I think it might be one of those things where we are going to have to focus on interior defensive line in the offseason. Also, shout out to a +6 in finesse moves. You absolutely love to see that. Those 2 upgrades carry him up to a 65 overall with the +2 to tackling. Speaking of those defensive tackles, we're going to keep it going here with Josh Middleton. And Josh Middleton is going to get that run stopper. It's going to be a 63 overall here at first. But then after the next one, he gets another boost here. So, those defensive tackles, they're certainly putting in that work and trying to continue to get better. Speaking of that defensive side of the ball, I am going to provide an upgrade for Terrell Agnew. And Terrell Agnew is not going to get an overall boost, but his temporary does go down. So he's like a natural 65 at this point with that +2 to power moves. Sidney Bush, an outside linebacker that we had on the practice squad, is going to work on his pass coverage as well, and that will jump him up to a 63 overall for the time being, with a +2 to zone coverage. Gordon Pizzo, who we brought in as an undrafted free agent. He didn't make the final roster, but was on the practice squad for the entire season. He does get a run-stopping upgrade. He'll be up to a 62 overall after the boost. Speaking of those linebackers, Lamar Hayward is going to get a field general upgrade, which helps him improve by 2 overall points, actually, thanks to a +3 in play recognition and block shedding as well. And the last upgrade that we have is to Otis Lipton, who we're trying to develop as a future backup free safety should we lose Chris Gentry in free agency. He'll get a plus in zone here, which takes him up to a 63 overall. Alright, so we've made it through just going ahead and checking out who we have in terms of who is retiring from the league ultimately. And Gregory Sanders of the Philadelphia Stars, among a couple of other players on that team, is going to retire. So the same person that beat us in the UFL championship game is not going to be on the team any longer. John Johnson, though, who is one of our offensive linemen, does end up retiring and leaving like the UFL. He is hanging it up after 15 seasons. And so that does mean that we might be in some need for possibly a new center. That might be something that we could explore when free agency opens up. But as we progress through the offseason, one of the burning questions that the Gem City media has for us is, how are we going to go about taking that final step that is required in order to win a UFL championships? As we were very close, and I think I really want to go and try to make a splash in free agency. I mean, we still have most of the roster intact, right? Peter Townsend is a big loss. Matt Weaver is a big loss, and obviously Andrew Collar is as well. So I want to come out there. I want to try to get some stars, but won't go into specifics of who we go after because I don't know who's available in free agency yet. So that's why I don't want to tip my hand too terribly much, but I definitely want to try and get some top line players to help make another deep run this season. Now, one nice thing about us, having the departures of like Andrew Collar as well as Peter Townsend and Matt Weaver is that it opens up our cap space pretty considerably. We now have 88 million in roster space that we can go ahead and utilize. Now, we could be losing some serious players here as Cameron Spencer, Barry Alvman, and Jared Strong. They're all guys that don't really have a ton of interest in terms of coming back and playing with us, but there is a handful that certainly are that we are going to go ahead and try and pursue. So Cameron Means we're going to let walk through free agency for sure, but for Kenny Beekman though, I definitely want to see if we can possibly bring him back. See if he wants to come back for $4.5 million, and Kenny Beekman will at least come back, so we're pretty happy about that. Champ Johnson is one of your guys' customs. I definitely want to see if we can bring him back as well. So we're going to go ahead and make an offer here. 2 years, $10 million. See if he can continue to grow for us. And sure enough, he does. So we will get him back. So with that being said, we will allow Daryl Upshaw, Sheldon Ferry, probably Philip Graham as well to walk. But I think what we definitely want to do here is Daryl McLeod. I know he is declining at a pretty alarming rate, but he is still considered our best defensive tackle. And, the other defensive tackles that we have right now are not really cutting it per se, right? So we're going to go ahead and see if we can make an offer to see if we can bring like Daryl McLeod back. And thankfully we do. And he's still a decent starter for us, but nothing too crazy there. Lucas Shelley, he's only a 59 overall, so if he walks, I mean, that's his business, not mine. And then Richard Gaffney, so he won that Offensive Lineman Player of the Year award, so we'll give him a little bit of a bump. Get him to see if he can save for like a 1 year, like $4 million. And yeah, okay, so he does end up staying. So we got the players that we wanted to come back, that we definitely wanted to set to the side. But now we got to focus in on our really important players. So that's Cameron Spencer, that's Barry Alfman, and that is also going to be Jared Strong as well. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get things started here, starting with Cameron Spencer. So what I want to do with Cameron Spencer, and obviously he's the most important player in all of this, right? We could give him like a $28 million bonus. Now, what's helping us out here is that we do have a franchise quarterback in Marvin Whitfield, so that's the good news. The bad news is, however, Dayton is not a big market, so that's working against us right now. So we may need to spend a significant amount of cap in order to bring him back. So what I am going to do for him is we are going to give him a $4 million base salary with $28.5 million as a signing bonus. And so that will mean, like, for the next 6 years, his cap hit would be more than $30 million. So we'll make this offer and he accepts it. So we get our star pass rusher back at the very least. Thank goodness. But now we so for Barry Alfman, he's on the 5th-year option, so that's an easy decision there. We're going to accept the option for sure. But now we focus in on the last person that we have, is Jared Strong. Seems like we'll see if we can get him to come back. Now, obviously, not close to home at all. You know, he's from the the state of Texas. After playing at Mississippi State for his college career, what does help is that we are a league favorite. So it does help that we are a contender. So we'll go ahead and make a 2-year, $8 million deal to see if that is enough to bring Jared Strong back. And unfortunately, it's not. Now, what I could do is I could put him on the franchise tag, but for someone that's a 76 overall, I don't think that makes a lot of sense, you know, paying someone that much for someone that would be like a mid-tier, like quarterback too. I loved him more as a CB3. So I think what we are going to do is let Jared Strong walk in free agency as well. And that will give us $32 million in cap space that we can work with. Alright, so after we've had people walk in free agency, this is what our roster is looking at in terms of how it's currently constructed, and certainly a few places of need for us here, right? So definitely could be using a new center. Now, I have nothing against Connor Hank. I think Connor Hank would be fine, but I would like to see if we can go ahead and find an even better quality center, because while I think he would be fine as a starter, he would be like an average to below average starter for our team. I think he would be better off as like a high tier backup as well. And the rest of our offensive line looks pretty good. I just don't want to have like a weak link that could be exposing our new quarterback that's going to be starting his first full year with us. In addition, while we have a solidified starter, in my opinion, in Marvin Whitfield, we don't have any other quarterbacks on the roster as well. So that's something that I want to go ahead and address. Get another quarterback on this roster, either through the draft or through free agency. Jonathan McGriff does upgrade his development, so he is now a superstar development, which is really amazing to see. So I definitely wanted to point that out. Now, defensively, I feel like our defense feels like we could certainly use some more help, so to speak. So I definitely want to go ahead and get that taken care of, primarily in the trenches. I think we have a very good pass rusher in Greg Sharp, but after that, it's a lot more of unproven talent. You know, Von Red, who started to come on in the second half of the season, but still needs to show a little bit more. Nas Evans is turning a little bit into a, well, I don't want to say bust, because he did have a solid rookie season, but he's a little bit of a disappointment because we didn't get that development trait. So he's a normal dev guy once again. And while we do have Daryl McLeod as our #1 defensive tackle, at the same time though, being #2 defensive tackle does absolutely fall off a cliff for us. And so I definitely want to get a better defensive tackle in the building for sure. Meanwhile, in the back end, over in the linebacking core, we have some amazing linebackers. That is not to be disputed whatsoever. However, after JJ Peters, Pizzo would be our backup outside linebacker right now. So what would be a strength would quickly turn into a weakness if JJ Peters does end up like getting hurt at any given point. So I definitely want to find a better quality outside linebacker for that particular reason as well. And then of course at corner, right now we are looking at either like a Quentin Gisely or like a Chris Gentry, who's not even a corner, he's a free safety. So our cornerback room is looking pretty light right now. Definitely want to go ahead and make sure that we get corner taken care of and get it done as soon as possible. So that's our big priorities here in free agency. So now we go ahead and get things rolling here in free agency with the $36.5 million that we do have in cap space remaining. And right away, we wanted to see what was available in terms of what can we get in terms of defensive starters. And my eyes gravitated over towards Matt Arnett out of University of Alabama, someone that definitely has some interest in us and is a pretty young player too, 25 years old. He's already a like 80 overall, which is really good to see. Not fully interested in us, although having Marvin Whitfield on the roster does help. So what I am going to do is I'm going to bump his offer up because I really want to make sure that we bring Matt Arnett in, because he could potentially be our #1 corner. That is something that is very real for us, right? So we're going to give him a type of deal that's going to be like a 4-year, $34 million deal. Really want to make sure that we are able to bring this guy in, and so we will make the offer for Matt Arnett and hope for the best on that front. And then at defensive tackle is something that was very important to me. And Jamin Bromley out of Northwestern really caught my attention as well. Really loves the scheme that we run, as well as the fact that we do have a Marvin Whitfield on our football team as well. So I really don't think that we have to necessarily make any adjustments in terms of bringing in a like a solidified defensive tackle. So we'll give him this base offer that's for 2 years and $21 million just about, and see if he'll accept that kind of offer as well. But after we go after those two particular players, we have to be really careful about who we end up bringing in after that. So I wanted to at least like bring in some like quality backups like from here on out. And I'm taking a look at who is available here in free agency. And while Vince Stanley certainly catches my eye, he would take up the rest of our cap space, which I don't think would necessarily be ideal. However, I do end up seeing one of your guys' customs in Wallace Hoverton, who's bounced around the league. He's been on a couple of different teams at this point. He was with originally with the Philadelphia Stars, and then bounced around and played for the Orlando Guardians last year. Hasn't seen the field yet. He still has that future starter tag though. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna send a flyer out to Wallace Hoverton. One, because he is someone that just so happens to, be someone that is a can be like a future starter for us someday. Maybe he could develop into a starter still. And he's kind of cheap, under $5 million a year. And he would be a quality backup for us. Definitely would be better than what we have available. So I'll send an offer to Wallace Hoverton, who is one of your guys' customs. And then I'm looking at improving that outside linebacker position so that I can have some depth behind JJ Peters. And I do end up seeing Mike Kincaid, who is a player out of Indiana, who has a little bit of experience, a little bit older, and isn't a great player by any means. But for someone that can play that backup position, I think he would be absolutely splendid. So I'll go ahead and possibly send him an offer as well. So I was thinking about trying to figure out what I want to do in terms of finding some depth behind JJ Peters, and I stumble across like these two players right here, and I want to take a harder look at Keandre Hargrave. He's a 26-year-old out of Baylor, has the same overall as Sheldon Brown, and his expected value is on the cheaper side, expecting less than $4 million a year, and someone that could absolutely be someone that can be a better backup than Gordon Pizzo. Absolutely sign me up for that. So I'm going to send him an offer as well, and that leaves us with $6.5 million that we can still work with. And then finally, like one last look I wanted to give in terms of doing my players that I wanted to try and bring in. I wanted to take a look at Dwight Cunningham out of Ole Miss. He's expecting less than $4 million a year, and while he's not the fastest corner in the world by any means, he's someone that, you know, if we were able to bring in another corner alongside him, could absolutely be a really good corner number 3 and even a decent like CB2 if it came down that way as well. So that'll be the only other offer that we'll make for the time being. So best thing that we can do right now is let's just go ahead and see if we end up getting all of the players that we end up signing. Alright boys, so taking a look at what we managed to accomplish in the first evaluation period, we end up getting all 5 guys that I wanted to target, right? So Matt Arnett, who could very well be our number 1 corner, he does end up signing with us. We do also sign Jamin Bromley as well, who is a younger player at just 25 years old and is someone that could absolutely be a solid defensive tackle 1 for us moving forward. So we're happy to bring him in. Dwight Cunningham could be really a quality CB3, so he could play really well, at least either in the slot or maybe be brought in nickel situations. Keandre Hargrave would be a much better backup than what we have in Gordon Piso. So if JJ Peters gets hurt, then we have someone behind him in terms of having him ready. Plus, JJ Peters is going to go to the NFL soon. So with that being said, since we might not have JJ Peters at the end of next season, Keandre Hargrave is going to be our long-term answer at the left outside linebacker position. Then finally, Wallace Huffington is one of your guys' custom. He's been floating around. We're going to bring him in as well, see if he could be a player that we can develop into a starting quarterback someday. So we gave him a 3-year deal for that. Alright, so we're getting into the point where we're starting to really consider what we want to do in terms of our draft picks, and I didn't see any interior offensive linemen that would really tickle my pickle, so to speak. So what I wanted to do in terms of my private workouts is I wanted to look for players that could step into starting positions, because we do have a few guys that could be going to the NFL as soon as next year, in Cameron Spencer, JJ Peters, and Leon Thomas as well. And we're picking towards the back end. We have the 31st overall pick in the UFL draft. That's the case for the other 6 picks because there's no trades in the UFL. So what I ended up doing is I'm going to give a pick to this Siles Smith. He is a left outside linebacker, so I want to definitely take a closer look at him. I'm also going to take a look at DJ Craig, the 23-year-old out of Auburn. Want to see what we have in terms of a playmaking type. Doesn't have the greatest awareness, but does have phenomenal ball carrier vision, so that could serve extremely well. And then looking over what I also want to go ahead and do, I think the last person I am going to take a serious look at is I want to take a look at the 21-year-old in Charles Sharp. He's also out of Auburn. And, definitely want to see what we have in those 3 guys in particular, because when push comes to shove, if an interior center that we don't really want to go after isn't available, I want to go for really either best available or going after players that could need to be replaced next year. So I think those 3 players are definitely people that I would absolutely be interested in. Alright boys, so we find ourselves here in the UFL draft, and we are selecting it with that 31st pick, and we are going to have that 31st pick for all 7 rounds, so that does mean that we are going to be picking towards the bottom. And it also means that we have to be creative in terms of, finding those diamonds in the rough, because we already know we are not going to get ourselves a top flight prospect, right? So with that being said, I want to go ahead and take a look and see who does LA get with their first overall pick. This would not be the first time that they do end up having this first overall pick in the UFL draft, and that is because they did end up finishing with the worst record for the second time in this in this league that we have. You know, keep in mind we've only been doing this for 4 years, so the LA Wildcats have genuinely been a a type of team that really has struggled. Now it looks like Will Holcomb was selected with the first overall selection. He is in fact a right tackle, was like a top 5 level prospect. So now we know about who that first pick is going to be. We'll go ahead and simulate ourselves to that 31st overall pick, where we will come in, and now we go ahead and figure out what we want to do. Now, with this 31st overall selection, we'll see what's available on our board, and there was a lot of players that we found that we really did like. However, with that being said, we get into like the start of this first round, and what we notice in this first round is that, you know, a lot of like the top players that we really wanted to go after, those top players are in fact not necessarily available. So we take a look at multiple options here. We could go in multiple different paths. I'm leaning towards going a linebacker here, and the reason why I'm leaning towards going for a linebacker, because Cameron Spencer and both JJ Peters, they are on the verge of like being guys that are going to head off to the NFL soon. That is certainly very possible. So we are looking at possible replacements here with those first round selections. And so with that being said, we take a hard look at Mason Foster. Mason Foster seems like a solid player and could certainly fit the bill of what we're looking for. We also take a look at Siles Smith as well here, and Siles Smith seems like he projects better as a second to third round talent. Don't think he could be available like in the next round if we wanted to go after him, and that is certainly an option for us. But what I think I am going to go ahead and do here is I'm going to go ahead and possibly settle on Mason Foster, unless like one of these other guys could go with Jeff Sharp here, or we could go even with Paul Duvall. But it looks like I might go with Sharp here. I think Sharp looks like the best prospect possible here, and so we're gonna roll with Jeff Sharp as our 31st overall selection. Hopefully that works out for us. You know, definitely could be a possible replacement for either Cameron Spencer or for JJ Sharp. Again, you know, we went down this path, you know, want to have like a future choice here, and it seems like he actually was a solid pick for us. You know, he ranks as the 23rd best player in terms of true value, and we got him with the 31st overall pick. So I do feel pretty good with how we ended up grabbing things. And not to mention, he does also end up with a hidden development trait as well. So he could absolutely be a young star in the making if he can get those opportunities to find the field. So like the player out of USC definitely feels like it's a good first round pick, and we found a future star. We do also see who Baltimore goes for. They grab Larry Harris out of Clemson. Alright, so we go ahead and get things rolling here with our second round pick here as we go ahead and see who does happen to be available for us as we head back to our good old favorites here. And it actually looks like there is someone here with a like first to second round projection that still happens to be available. Darius Hayward certainly interests me, and I feel like what at least he could be is that Hayward could be a guy that could absolutely be, at least could be a better overall like backup. And I really like what he brings. You know, it seems like he has good catching ability, seems like he would have a decent deep route, good run blocking, solid catch in traffic, just seems like a solid all-around player. Plus he has tremendous size as well, coming in at 6'6", so certainly a great red zone target. Not the fastest guy in the world, a 4.6 40, so he's probably a little bit more of a blocking tight end, but that's perfect for us because we do have a more run-oriented offense, and with now Marvin Whitfield as our quarterback, we could be going in that direction a little bit more so. So in this case, I think what I want to go ahead and do, and I just want to double check to make sure that like centers, like there isn't any like notable centers that I want to go after. It looks like could go for Jaron Henson, but it looks like we could either go for Henson or Tony Ward. So we could absolutely go for a center in the next round. So I think Darius Hayward is going to be the pick for us here. We'll see how he turns out here with the 63rd overall selection. in the UFL draft, the Dayton Triangles are going to select Darius Hayward, and actually is a little bit lower in terms of true value. He's 85th in true value, but we're given a C+ grade here. Did play college basketball for a couple years, does have reliable hands as well. He does carry a normal development trait, and he's not the fastest guy in the world. However, with that being said, he is someone that is going to be a prime red zone target. I am excited to see what Darius Hayward can do for a football team. Alright, so here we are with the now in the 3rd round of the UFL draft, and we'll go ahead and get ourselves back to work here as we go ahead and see who we can go ahead and try and conjure up. I did mention that in the past I definitely wanted to consider going after a center because I want to find like a future starting center, and one of the players that I was actually considering grabbing here is Tony Ward. He was moving upward towards the end as he moved up almost a full round in the draft process, so he is trending in the right direction. I also like that he does have good awareness. His pass blocking is absolutely incredible. Does have a decent impact blocking, even though he is a little bit older of a prospect, 23 years old, but he does have a great motor and shows good discipline as well. Won't get flagged very often. I think this is going to be a solid pick for us, so we're going to go ahead and grab Tony Ward here with our 3rd round selection. Although on the surface, it seems like we definitely missed on this guy. 233 in true value. We drafted him in 95. Does definitely seem like an absolute miss, as he only has a 50 and change of direction. I'll have to go ahead and see what he has in terms of what he can do. Seems like he's a better pass blocker, but not the future, like a center that may not be ready to play for us right away, unfortunately. That's a miss on me. Alright, so now we get into work here with day number 3 as we try to make some things shake here in the 4th round, as we'll go ahead and see who happens to be available for us in terms of like favorite guys that I want to go ahead and go after here. Now, for this next pick, I could go in a couple of different directions here. I'm leaning towards either drafting Don Reese or Zaire Furman. Zaire Furman may be a better scheme fit, but Don Reese, is someone that I want to look at specifically because with Leon Thomas, he is starting to get close to getting onto an NFL roster. However, he doesn't have any elite traits. He does have okay traits in catching and the deep route as well. We'll just have to go ahead and see what Zaire Furman brings to the table. And it seems like Zaire Furman does have a little bit of better traits. He has better catching abilities than Don Reese does have. We'll check him one more time. And yeah, Don Reese doesn't have great catching abilities, I would say. So I think what I want to do here with this 4th round selection, I think I'm going to go ahead and draft Zaire Furman just to continue to build this roster out a little bit and get a future choice. So we'll go ahead and select Zaire Furman with our 4th round selection, and we'll see how this pans out. And we actually do pretty good with Zaire Furman. Number 63 in true value. So he has had a 2nd round game. Just really the big thing is, does he have NFL speed? Because he certainly has, decent man coverage abilities, shows some good instincts as well, does have a normal development trait, but 92 speed, 89 jumping, 90 acceleration. I feel really good about this particular pick. I think we found ourselves a good corner here in the 4th round. Alright, so let's go ahead and roll into the 5th round of the UFL draft. Really digging in here to like day number 3 action here, as we really try to make our money, in this particular time. And look who still happens to be available here late in the draft. Don Reese, who we are actually considering taking with our previous selection, he still happens to be available. So with that being said, for me, this is a particular no-brainer. He is listed as a top fit for us, and he's only 21 years old, so definitely has a little bit more time to develop than most prospects. And he actually, it turns out to be a good pick as well. Don Reese ends up being number 98 in true value, so he's a top 100 pick. Ends up being in like that late 3rd, like early 4th round. And we get him in the 5th round, so I feel like we did a really good job in terms of finding a quality receiver here. He's got 91 speed, 90 jumping, 94 acceleration, and 90 agility to go with all of that. So I feel really good about this Don Reese pick, and even though we only found one hidden dev so far, other than our 3rd round selection, I think we're doing a fantastic job in this draft so far. Alright, so here we are with our 6th round selection here, and I definitely want to see if we have any guys that are listed as favorites, and it looks like we don't. So now it gets real interesting here in terms of what we want to go ahead and do here with our final like couple of selections, and it gets really interesting here. So I don't love any of these day 3 guys. I can definitely say that off the top of my head. Want to take a look at maybe guys like Cody Barkley here. And actually, Kobe Barkley looks really interesting here, so we may actually bring him in. I know we did sign a backup quarterback, but definitely doesn't hurt to bring in like a 3rd quarterback by any means. But what does Aiden Burbank bring to the table? Looks like Aiden Burbank doesn't have like a very good like under pressure like statistic by any means. So I think what I want to do at this point, I think for my 6th round selection, I may just take a flyer here on Kobe Barkley. Seems like he has solid traits. He has good medium accuracy. Could be someone that we could develop into a backup possibly. So we'll go ahead and grab him with our 6th round selection. And oh baby, that 390 in true value may not be the pick that we wanted after all. He is a dynamic playmaker. He does have like a decent intermediate accuracy, but taking a look at some of his traits here, doesn't have like the best throw power, only 82 throw power, but he seems like he's a fast player. You know, maybe we can mold him maybe into like a Taysom Hill kind of archetype, something that we could definitely look into for sure. Alright, so we go ahead, we have our final selection here in the UFL draft, and it's very slim pickings at this point, not really like a ton of guys that we could necessarily go after here. Now, we already went after a tight end, but I'm kind of curious, you know, what is Nate Worthy like all about? Don't love his pass blocking here. Just really looking for, you know, where's those like diamonds in the rough, like so to speak, right? Brandon McCain. Not really feeling Brandon McCain, to be honest with you. But what about Gordon Goodrich? Yeah, that zone coverage isn't phenomenal either. Just really taking a look and seeing who we could go here as the clock continues to tick. Phil Woodward is a potentially undrafted free agent. Doesn't have like much there either. This is going to be a really interesting decision here. Just trying to run through all the options here as possible, as we are looking at guys that, you know, maybe could like fit the bill for us at this late in the stage. As we'll see if there's much that we can do. Kenny Crocker actually looks interesting to me. 6'4", out of Boston College, has decent traits. So we'll go ahead and grab Kenny Crocker here with the final selection. And looks like he is a little bit on the weak side in terms of his strength. Does have like a lot of work to do in terms of being a solid player. Probably someone that we're going to put on the practice squad if we're going to be real with ourselves here real fast. But with that being said, even with the last couple picks not being ideal, I still think we did a pretty good job. But let's go ahead and take a look at our draft class in further detail to see how we actually did. Alright guys, so this is what our UFL draft class is going to look like. And listen, you know, we don't have a ton of like great guys, right? But I look at this draft class, and at least like through the first 5 rounds, I thought we did a pretty good job, all things considered, right? We did like have some flops there towards the end, like going after like Kobe Barkley as well as Kenny Crocker. I mean, those were not great choices in retrospect. They were guys that were projected undrafted, but you know, wanted to take flyers on them to see if they were diamonds in the rough, and I just happened to be wrong. It happens to the best of us. Do like what we have in Jeff Sharp here. Seems like he could be a solid player, could be a backup for us right away, and then also have some good developmental prospects moving forward. Darius Hayward could be our backup tight end right away. Tony Ward could use some development, and then Zaire Furman and Don Reese could possibly work with us in special teams as well. So even though we probably don't have any impact starters in this draft class, I feel like we have some players that are certainly intriguing. Now, if you guys want to be involved in this series in a more personal way, you can definitely replace one of these players. I will rename these guys. All you would have to do is check out the templates that are in the description if you want someone that is going to be joining the Dayton Triangles roster. But if you want somebody that isn't on this team by any means, you want to be on a different team for whatever reason, then that template is also available as well. So this is our draft class going into the new season, and I'm looking forward to working with all of these guys moving forward. Alright, man, so we are back after the draft and free agency, talking to the Gem City media once again, and really trying to revisit, talking about what we promised to this Gem City, faithful, and that is trying to find a top line player. And, while we ended up finding some quality starters out in free agency, able to address, needs that we had at defensive tackle, trying to find, someone that could become a CB1 for us, replacing that role that Peter Townsend had in the first 4 years of this series. At the same time, though, I don't feel that like we found like a superstar necessarily in free agency. So we'll go say our D tackle 1 is someone that I want to go after, and while the media disagrees, I think he'd really develop into a superstar. But before we even get into training camp, we do see that we do have an upgrade for one of our outside linebackers, Johnny Sullivan, who is someone that we did bring in the past. And, during this time in the preseason, as well as when we are in the postseason and the offseason as well, I do like to use this time to work on, making ourselves the best scheme fit as possible. So in this case, we'll work on pass coverage here, and he's back up to a 69 overall. Although he is being held back by that morale event that happened because we didn't sign a good enough player in free agency. +2 in zone coverage should help us out tremendously though. But you literally cannot make this up, because look who we end up going against in our first preseason game, bro. We are taking on the Philadelphia Stars in the preseason. First preseason matchup, a rematch of the UFL Championship game last year. And so with that being said, gonna have a real nice opportunity now to take a deep look in terms of what we have in our roster as we go ahead and get things rolling here. 4th and 1, it's the preseason. Want to see if we can pick up that 1 yard required. And so far, Marvin Whitfield has not gotten off to a good start. He had some really good reads in the couple of games that he appeared in last season in the absence of Andrew Collar. But with that being said, a slow start here, meaning that we're going to find ourselves down 7-3 already. And not to mention, we're not going to do ourselves any favors. Javon Bramley, one of those free agent acquisitions that I was talking about earlier, well, he ends up going off sides. So this becomes a much more manageable 2nd down. But alas, that does mean that they are going to find the back of the end zone there. And with that being said, Philadelphia does get another touchdown on the board. Now, something that you definitely have to realize as well is that Philadelphia is also working with a brand new quarterback, as Nas Evans is going to be able to get the forced fumble. Nas Evans is someone that may never live up to his potential as a 2nd round pick, but as a rotational player, he's certainly a quality backup to have, even though, you would expect a little bit more from a 2nd round pick, as this time we will see the offense down here. Wallace Hoverton, one of your guys' customs, is going to play for the rest of his preseason game, and is going to throw his first touchdown of the preseason, actually. Firing it out to Leon Thomas, who is still going to play because we don't have a ton of wide receivers on the roster. So that's why we're seeing a little bit more of Leon Thomas. But with that being said, we'll see what these other receivers can do, as Hoverton is going to drop back. He's got a clean pocket, tries to target Leon Thomas once again. But unfortunately, Thomas cannot bring it in. And so that does make it 3rd and 4 coming up. We'll see what the young custom backup has in store here as Hoverton drops back, fires over the middle, and finds the savvy veteran in Will Hunter out of Eastern Michigan, taking us down to the goal line, and all of a sudden we're just a couple of yards away from tying this ball game up, and Hoverton wants to throw to Leon Thomas, but can't quite haul that in. So we're going to switch to our ground game here, and Joe Spears, a special teams specialist, is going to get a carry down on the goal line and actually follows his blocks pretty well. He's going to find the end zone for us, and that allows us to tie this ball game up going into the final quarter of action here. 17 all with 8 minutes to play in the game, and Leon Thomas is going crazy on this secondary though, really helping with the development of Wallace Hoverton, who came in with, aspirations of being a starting quarterback, but just hasn't fully clicked for him yet. But, looking pretty solid now that he's gotten settled in here, as Dominic Christmas is going to get across the 10-yard line for a really nice first down there. And Dominic Christmas is going to take him down to the 8-yard line. And that's how close we are to taking the lead for the first time today. 1st and goal from the 8-yard line as we go with an RPO, firing into Cam Johnson. And Cam Johnson, the 3rd-year player out of Mississippi Valley State, nearly scores there on the goal line situation. But instead, it will be Leon Thomas that will get that rep as he's going to find the end zone. Touchdown for the Dayton Triangles. And with that being said, we now have ourselves a lead here, 24-17 your score. And the boys in blue will have a chance to close this game out with a key 4-minute drive as Joe Spears getting some good work here. Is getting surprisingly more work than the former 2nd-round pick in Heath Whitehead. But Joe Spears is doing good with the opportunity, so we're going to keep him in the game, though, as this will be likely the final play before the 2-minute warning. And Joe Spears is nearly going to mess around and pick up that 1st down conversion, which is going to be really helpful for us as we are trying to take time off the clock. But I also want to see how Wallace Hoverton can pass, in these 2-minute conversion situations as we throw to the right-hand side, looking for our brand new target in Darius Hayward, the 2nd-round rookie, but can't quite win that contested catch situation. So we're going to go ahead and run for it on 3rd and 2, and Joe Spears cannot get there. So that means Philadelphia could still have a little bit of life, but you know what? I just want to put the hammer down anyways. 4th and short, we're going to run for it, and Joe Spears is going to get it. 1st down for the Dayton Triangles, and that could very well clutch this game up. It's now 1st and 10 from the 22-yard line. Getting ready to go ahead and try to make some adjustments at the line because, again, I want to see what we got in Wallace Hoverton. This is the preseason. Normally, I wouldn't decide to necessarily throw in this situation. I would just keep pounding the rock, obviously. But because it is preseason, that is a different story, though. As now, with Wallace Hoverton taking the sack, we got a long ways to go. But with that being said, Philadelphia is out of timeouts at the very least. So we can continue to run this clock. And not to mention, if we can make the field goal, should we not get this 1st down conversion, then what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to ice the game with the field goal kick. Should be a pretty easy field goal to make. And it was. The field goal attempt from Felipe Nicholas is good. And that's going to give us a 27-17 victory in our first preseason game. Want to see more from our first team offense, but really liked what I saw from the rest of the squad. So it was a slow start for your Dayton Triangles, it seems like, in the 1st quarter, but, after we got settled in for a quick second, we played so much better, particularly with the backups. Hopefully that means that we are going to, we need our starters to play a little bit better and start off a little bit faster. Otherwise, this season could be a little bit of a struggle for us, but nice that we did get a win in this instance. As for Wallace Hoverton, listen, Wallace Hoverton, still has some flashes of why he was a highly touted player coming out of college, playing at NC State. He threw for over 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Marvin Whitfield looked dreadful in his debut, in his first full season as the starting quarterback. He goes just 1 for 7 for 19 yards. It was a really tough watch in his first quarter of play. He has to be a lot better going forward. On the ground, Joe Spears, however, I will say looked pretty good. 16 carries, 79 yards, and a touchdown. Jonathan Griffin got a couple of carries, and so did a handful of other people. Dominic Christmas, the backup tight end, actually led the team today with 6 catches and 83 yards. Leon Thomas was able to find the end zone a couple of times. Champ Johnson had a few nice catches as well. And then Will Hunter, the savvy veteran, was able to have 3 catches and 36 yards over the course of this game. Defensively, it seems like we have a little bit of a surprise here, as Jordan Baptiste actually did lead the team in tackles with 9 total tackles. Chris Gentry, the backup free safety out of Southern Utah, was also able to get involved, as he had mostly solo tackles. He had 7. Also helped with a sack, as Chris Gentry and Jordan Baptiste combined on a sack. And then so did Gabe Truman, our 5th round pick from last season, played pretty well in this game. And then Nas Evans, the 2nd round pick, who used to have that hidden dev, but because we didn't play him enough, did end up being one of those guys that did end up getting sacked as well. So Nas Evans did get a sack at least. Looked pretty good there. Also was able to force multiple turnovers too. Niles Cotton was able to force an interception, and then we had a forced fumble from Chris Gentry, the backup free safety, which did end up having to be recovered by Nas Evans. So a pretty good performance by our defense, particularly from our backups. But right after the game, we get some extremely nice news, as multiple players, as a result of training camp, do get some player upgrades. And we had at least one person that had 2 upgrades as well, which happens to go to Jamon Bronwey, who we brought in through free agency. Both times we are going to use that run stopper upgrade. The first one does get him up to an 80 overall, and then we'll do that one more time, and he'll actually be bumped to an 81 because of that. He got +3 to awareness and a +3 to finesse, plus and in addition a +2 to play recognition. So Jamon Bromley really working pretty well for us here in his Dayton tenure. But he's definitely not the only person to get some upgrades. So as Felipe Nichols, our veteran kicker, is going to get an upgrade as well. We'll work on power with him for this time around, and he is back up to an 86 overall with a +2 to kick accuracy, which I thought was really intriguing to me, but it is what it is. Gotta love Madden sometimes. Matt Arnett, our new top corner, he's gonna get an upgrade as well. We'll work on his man-to-man in this particular instance, and he'll be jumping up to an 82 overall with some pluses into play recognition and tackling. Also getting an upgrade is Heath Whitehead, who is one of our backup running backs on the roster. I want him to be the running back too, but is still in that great lot of competition, it seems like, with Joe Spears. Hopefully with this elusive back upgrade, this helps in that matter, as he gets a +3 and change in direction. Meanwhile, the backup Wallace Hoverton actually looked pretty good out there overall. I liked what he did in that first preseason game, so he gets an upgrade from that experience. We'll work on field general in this instance, and he's almost ready for another upgrade as well. Should see that in the next game, but he gets a +2 to the short accuracy. Jeff Sharp, our 1st round pick, and someone that does have that hidden development, actually does get an upgrade as well. He looked really good in the drills in training camp, and put together had some flashes in the first preseason game. He gets some pluses in block shedding and play recognition, but if we do draw a lot closer to finding out what his hidden development trait is, as we are almost halfway there already, so you love to see that. Couple more upgrades here is from other rookies on the roster. Zaire Furman is one of those rookies. We'll work on his man-to-man in this instance, and he already gets up to a 69 overall, which is pretty nice with that man coverage and press upgrades being utilized. And then Don Reese. Don Reese is someone that we're looking to build upon moving forward. He is a, I believe, 5th round rookie, if I'm not mistaken. Don Reese is going to get the playmaking upgrade, and he jumps up to a 68 overall, and getting some significant increases to ball carrying vision, break tackling, catching traffic, and that release as well. So we move on to the next week of the preseason, and right away we have quite a few of our players, new players on the roster, getting some more upgrades here. Marvin Whitfield is one of those guys, and he is going to get the field general upgrade. He's going to jump up to a 79 overall with that +2 to throw accuracy, like in that intermediate part of the field. Wallace Huffington is another player that is going to get an additional upgrade as well. Looked really good in the game against the Philadelphia Stars in that first preseason matchup. We'll go ahead and work that field general here, as Wallace Huffington is going to get that field general upgrade as well. Jeff Sharp continues to impress in training camp as he gets already another upgrade here in this brand new season. We'll give him another run-stopping upgrade, being held back a little bit by the morale issues that we're having, but he does get at least a +2 in tackling in this regard. Don Reese, our rookie wide receiver, gets another upgrade here as well, and even though he probably won't play much in his rookie season, you know, someone to definitely keep an eye on for future campaigns. We'll give him another playmaker upgrade, and just like that, he's already a 70 overall with a +3 in deep route, +2s to awareness, release, and short route running. You know, Don Reese, you know, if he continues to improve like this, hey, maybe he could make some kind of contribution in his rookie year, kind of like a Michael Thomas and like a Mitch Robinson kind of did for us last year. And then the last upgrade that we have is Otis Whipton, who at this point is still a developmental project for us. We'll work on his zone coverage here, and he jumps up to an overall, but definitely is going to be our third free safety and is currently fighting for an active roster spot. Alright, but as we continue to progress through the offseason, we always have a situation where we are going to have a position battle, and as we get ready to encroach closer into season number 5, that is always going to be the case as well. But this year was interesting. This year's position battle is going to be taking place at defensive end between Greg Sharp and Nas Evans. Now, I was a little surprised to see that because we gave Nas Evans all the opportunities in the world, and he just couldn't make the most of those opportunities last year. So, Greg Sharp, he is going to be, you know, your usual starter, and then we're probably looking at like Von Red on the other side. But, you know, we'll see how things play out for the rest of the preseason. However, as we actually hear from Greg Sharp himself saying that, oh, like my personality can be a like a problem sometimes, and he asked us to be honest with him and seeing if we should try to change how his approach is. And so with that being said, I was honest with him. I told him that, you know, I want you like to be more of a leader, because he is one of our better defensive players. And of course, this is how he responds. I don't feel like we have enough trust to take your advice, which doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you even go and ask me for advice? That's what I call a classic ask hole, you know what I'm saying? Like, you ask for advice knowing that you're probably not going to take it if it's not what you want to hear necessarily. Just the worst, one of the worst kind of people, man, I swear to you. But with that being said, we're going to jump into our second preseason game that we have here in this episode, and that is us taking on the Michigan Panthers as Whitfield tries to fire to right-hand side, nearly intercepted. Wanted to chuck that ball out to Leon Thomas, our top receiver, but not a very advised throw there. Maybe he should have been better off running it, I don't know, but third and short, we're going to try to throw for the first down as we look for Woodson. And Michael Woodson is going to be able to hang on. The second-year player out of Oklahoma State showing some sure hands there. As now it's going to be first and goal from the 2-yard line. And with that, Jonathan McGriff is going to finish the job, finding a big old hole. I could have ran through that, and I'm slower than premium Tom Brady, bro. And Jonathan McGriff gives us the early lead in the second preseason matchup. Now, with that being said, the Michigan Panthers look to respond themselves. He's got first and goal from the 10-yard line as they go with a jet sweep, initially covered by J.J. Peters, but he can't finish the play. That is very much unlike J.J. Peters. That should have been for a short loss, but instead Michigan is actually going to score off of that. That is a surprise to me, but it is what it is. So ball up top, as the kids would say, and we just got to keep playing hard. Now, we get ourselves down into about the red zone here. I would call this part like the orange zone because we're not inside the 20, but I mean, we're inside the 30. We're in field goal range. Definitely want to still try to finish this drive out. I got the hiccup, so that's interesting. But first and 10, about halfway through the second quarter. Michigan sends the blitz, but very good job recognizing that and then going to the check down in Darius Hayward, the second-round pick. And so with that being said, we are going to run it up the gut for our main man, Jonathan McGriff, who's going to be the main cog of this offense this year. And McGriff is going to find the end zone yet again. So now we got a 14-10 lead on our hands as we now move to late in the third quarter of action, as Michigan is looking to pick up the first down here once again. Firing over the middle, and it's caught for a big play that gets a lot bigger, as Jerome Hall picks up 29 yards on that reception. He's got some game speed, man, I'll tell you what. And so they're going to hand it back off to Jerome Hall, who gets to the outside and nearly actually gets to the outside, even though we had decent containment there. I'm not going to lie to you. So with that being said, we're entering the fourth quarter now as Hall gets another carry to that right-hand side one more time. And Hall is going to get across the 5-yard line for a goal line opportunity. So first and goal from the 3-yard line. They actually decide to pass, and he had a man open but threw it short. And so it's going to be second and goal instead, where they're going to look over to that left-hand side, and the first-round pick, Jeff Sharp, cannot get there in the nick of time. And with that, Ben Woods finds the end zone for the Michigan Panthers. And that means that Michigan will retake the lead, setting up a potential 2-minute drill for Wallace Hoverton. But that is not the way you want to start things out whatsoever. Gets brought down by Carmichael. And so a long second down coming up here, just trying to get some of those yards back, which we will with the savvy veteran Will Hunter, who will end up getting his 4th catch of the day, but it was all on short passes. Is now 3rd and 9 coming up as we have rolled in the 2-minute drill now, as Hoverton with a clean pocket tries to throw over the middle to Cam Johnson, but Johnson cannot complete the play though. And so 4th down for the game. What does Wallace Hoverton and company do? We'll see what our custom quarterback has, and he rolls to the outside right away, fires over right inside and finds Dominic Christmas down at the 20. And this team now has some life again. Hoverton in the no huddle, dropping back, fires over the middle of the field. He's got Christmas one more time. Touchdown, Dayton. And you want to talk about a Dominic Christmas legacy game here, fighting for that tight end 2 job. That it was a wonderful drive, specifically by our tight end, showing why he still needs to be a part of his team going forward. You have a new tight end on the roster. So with that being said, we come back out once again, waiting for our defense to make a stand. 2nd and 10 now coming up as Michigan drops back, fires over the middle, throws it short. And Johnny Sullivan, the 3rd-year player out of Oklahoma, is able to bring him down before the first down marker. And so trying to go ahead and throw it to the left-hand side, and it's incomplete. So just need one more stop, and just like that, this game will be over. We'll see if our boys can get it done on this 4th and 5. Looking over to right-hand side, getting lost in coverage is Hargrave. Now he does make the tackle before going out of bounds. So it does at least force Michigan to take a timeout, but not ideal for, what is a really important drive. Arguably, actually, I wouldn't even say this is the most important drive of the game. So not how we want to see things play out right now, but to always get an incompletion there to make it 2nd and 10. As I'm sure this will be another pass play. We'll go cover 4 to try to avoid the deep ball, and we almost give up a long completion anyways. So fortunate that that ball was overthrown, because that was a touchdown waiting to happen. Instead, it's 3rd and 10. They are going to throw over to the left-hand side, and that being said, Hall is going to get a 4th down coming right up here. So again, another chance to end this game once and for all. Can our backup defense make it happen? As they'll drop back, looking over the middle. It's going to fire over the deep shot, and Lipton can't get it loose. And so it's a 1st and goal inside the 5, and nearly had a game-winning touchdown there. Except he drops it. Hopefully that doesn't hurt him too terribly much. On the 2nd and goal now. Going to the left-hand side, and Hendricks gets danced out of the shoes. And it's a touchdown for the Michigan Panthers, who might have just won this game off of that particular drive. And what a drive it was after we saw Wallace Hoverton go down the field. And so, with just a couple of seconds left in the half, Hoverton dropping back, is going to step up in the pocket, wanting to target the late round rookie, Don Reese. But alas, it ends up being intercepted, just trying to make something happen. And the Michigan Panthers are going to come out on top. They are going to win 24-21, your final score. And we won our first preseason game, but now we lost our first 2. Alright boys, so our first string guys did play reasonably well. They played better than I would say in that first preseason game. Unfortunately, in the second half, we kind of tailed off a little bit, and the Michigan Panthers were able to come back. They win 24-21, and just continues to show that we have some work to do if we want to live up to the expectations that we set for ourselves last season. Now, with that being said, I thought that Marvin Whitfield played very much better than what we saw in the first preseason game. He was more effective with 8 for 12 and 82 yards. Wallace Hoverton had a really nice drive as well towards the end of the first half, but beyond that, didn't do anything too crazy. 11 for 20, 130 yards, touchdown. Did throw an interception at the very end of the game, though. Wallace Hoverton is showing that, he's probably like a high-level backup, which is not a bad thing. For the ground game, though, we definitely struggled getting anything of consistency on the ground, as McGriff was our leading rusher with just 31 yards. However, he did find the end zone on 2 separate occasions. For the receivers, Donnie Christmas actually did lead the team in yards today. He had 62 yards and a touchdown. Did catch the only touchdown pass. Will Hunter actually did lead the team with 4 grabs, but only managed to turn that into 18 yards in the process. And then Leon Thomas and DeAndre Bazier were hanging at around 50 yards for the time being. Defensively, Jordan Baptiste once again does lead the team in tackles. He had 9 total tackles, followed by Otis Lipton, who got some more playing time here in this second preseason matchup. However, we failed to generate any pass rush, which I feel like is going to be a concern with Matt Lever leaving the team because he is now a part of that NFL fraternity. So we do need to find some consistent pass rush for sure. Jordan Baptiste, however, did manage to get an interception, so we absolutely do love that. Plus, Jamon Bronway, our free agent acquisition, was able to force a fumble as well, and actually had 2 fumble recoveries, which I don't know how that works. So we did force turnovers, but again, really want to make sure that we're getting better in terms of generating a pass rush consistently. Now, with that being said, as we get into the final week of the preseason, we do have a few guys that are getting some upgrades. J.J. Peters being one of them. He did have that missed tackle that did ultimately lead into a touchdown, so hopefully he can get himself back on track here before the regular season starts. In the meantime, though, we will work on run stopper, and he will be back up to an 87 overall with some +1s across the board. Justice Freelove, our first round pick from last season, he's also going to get an upgrade as well. We'll work on his agility this time around, and he'll be up to a 74 overall. So really getting closer to becoming a consistent starter on this team. Get some +2s in awareness and lead block, plus an additional free attribute points for run blocking as well. And then Zaire Furman, who looked like had some nice moments in that second preseason game, he does get an upgrade as well. We'll work on his man-to-man on this particular occasion, and he's already up to a 70 overall, so I'm very pleased with how he is progressing so far. He has a +4 to play recognition because of the upgrade. Now, in the first couple of games of this preseason, we did end up seeing Cameron Spencer get the majority of the reps as a starter, but now that we're getting into the final preseason matchup, and now that we're also getting into a point where the starters are going to play the mass majority of this next preseason game, what I did end up deciding to do is I am going to go ahead and take Jeff Sharp here, our first round pick, and I'm going to go ahead and just allow him to go and play as the starter at outside linebacker. Depending on how he does, I might consider putting him at middle linebacker because it seemed like he had some solid moments in this preseason so far. At the same time, though, if Hitchens continues to have his struggles and continues to have his gripes, then maybe we could explore the possibility of having Jeff Sharp, at least for this season, play the majority of his downs at middle linebacker so that we have an opportunity on getting him onto the field a little bit more. Alright boys, so let's go ahead and jump into our final preseason game that we have here in this offseason, as we'll be taking on the Eugene Chiefs just to try to finish the regular season strong. And this is kind of a dress rehearsal game for the regular season, right? Because this is where we'll see the starters playing for the vast majority of the game. They'll play 3 out of the 4 quarters here. And so we'll get a good look at what our team could be like here now that we are playing the starters for the vast majority of the game. And so far, I'm not going to lie, I do not like what I am seeing whatsoever, as we do see Chuck Turk find the end zone early in the first quarter to get a 7-0 lead. And then Eugene is going to again drive it down the length of the field with a chance to possibly extend this lead even further, but so far the goal line stand is standing tall, but they'll go for it here on 4th down from the 1-yard line. Are they going to try to run for it? No, it's a pass play over the right hand side, and it will of course end up being caught. A touchdown for Chuck Turk once again, who gets a second one of the day. And just when you think things could not turn around for us, we do at least get a first down stop. That is Greg Sharp, who is actively competing for his own defensive end job right now. I don't think that there is such a position battle here. I think he's miles ahead of Nas Evans right now. It would be different if he still had his hidden development trait, but Nas Evans is considered a normal dev now, so that's kind of mute. But what I do want to see is I want to see if this offense really puts something together here, because we are not in a good spot right now, like nearly at all, right? So 1st and 10 coming up. Whitfield's going to drop back to pass, fire to the right-hand side, and trying to fit it in that window for Grayson Heidick, and Heidick just could not bring it in. So now 2nd and 10 coming up. Whitfield drops back, fires over the middle, and finds DeAndre Bossier, who again picks up yet another first down, gets across midfield. And this offense is starting to find a rhythm. Seeing if that continues as Whitfield fires again over the middle to DeAndre Bossier, who he's really built a chemistry with, it seems like. He's going to him quite a bit on this drive. It's now 2nd and long will be coming up after that incompletion, but only have maybe one more play before halftime, before we try and field goal. So Whitfield's just going to yeet it out, and Grayson Heidick makes the play, gets away from a defender, and scores! Grayson Heidick with a touchdown to end the first half, and that's a way to really establish some momentum, and it really allows us the opportunity to really get back into this game here, as we're only down by a few points. So we've been clawing back slowly but surely after we were down 14-0 initially. Just got to make sure that we come out here and get a stop defensively, keep him out in the end zone, as Cameron Spencer, known for his pass rush, he had a chance at an interception, a chance to end the drive once and for all, but can't bring it in. And so it's going to be 3rd and long instead, forcing Vin Doom out of the pocket, and it's going to be recovered by Cameron Spencer. Let's go, baby. That's what I'm talking about, my boy. Cameron Spencer making an impact immediately. And so we now have a chance to take the lead here. Halfway through this 4th quarter, Heath Whitehead is in here trying to get the carry, but Whitehead is going nowhere. He's got nowhere to run on that counter. They brought the blitz from the correct location. And so a big decision here for us, and we're going to go for it here. 4th and 1. I'm trusting my offensive line to hold it down and trusting Wallace Hoverton in terms to make a play too. Hoverton sends Whitehead out into motion, drops back, looks over to the right hand side and connects with the 3rd-year man, Cam Johnson, out of Mississippi Valley State, home of the Delta Devils. And so that eventually does spark a red zone opportunity, which Heath Whitehead is going to capitalize. He's going to shove him out. And here in Alt Sand Stadium, Heath Whitehead gives the Dayton Triangles the lead going into the final moments of this ball game. So here we are, just 3 minutes left to play, and Vin Doom, one of your guys' customs, by the way, has an opportunity to put together a game-winning drive to end the preseason. We'll see if Vin Doom can do it. 2nd and short now coming up. Doom is going to go ahead, run the ball up the middle, and that is going to be a 1st down for McFadden, who moves the chains, and I was not expecting that. I was not expecting him to run it this late in the game, but, you know, good intuition there, realizing what we are up to, and so they are certainly keeping us on our toes right now. And one more 1st down as well could put Eugene in field goal range, which they are going to get right here, as that will be a 1st down. Jordan Baptiste on the tackle. And that means that we have a 2-minute drill on our hands. 1:30 left to play. Looking over the middle of the field. And it's going to be caught again. Nearly a 1st down. But taking their sweet time on the no huddle as almost 20 seconds falls off the board before we even see them run another play. But they will use a timeout though. And certainly they're not too worried about that clock. Doom firing over the middle of the field, and he had a wide open man. Touchdown Eugene, and the Chiefs are going to possibly win on a last-second drive. And this would be the 2nd time that this happens in the preseason, unless Wallace Hoverton has something to say about it. Dropping back, he's got a clean pocket, firing to the right-hand side, and Don Reese makes the play, but gets tackled immediately, so he can't pitch it back. And so, while this is a great catch by Don Reese, at the same time, though, we are going to drop our final preseason game. Vin Doom does lead that game-winning drive, and Eugene is going to come out and win 24-20, and we'll go to 1-2 in the preseason. So it was a slower start for your Dayton Triangles in that 1st half of action, but then as the game wore on, we were able to play better. I felt like we really did have a spark towards the end of the 1st half, and we even won the turnover battle. Just unfortunately, our defense could not hold it down towards the back end of the game. Not to mention Eugene just absolutely dominating us in time of possession. They had the ball for 30 minutes while we were lucky to have it for 13 and a half. They doubled us up there. Now, with that being said, we did see one of your guys' custom players, play in this game. And actually, we saw mainly Vincent Doom in backup work, but played pretty well. 11 for 12, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Their starter, Evan Mason, looked pretty good. He also has a quarterback of the future, too. He ends up with 23 for 25, 220 yards, and 2 touchdowns. As for our players, Marvin Whitfield looks solid, 10 for 20, 150 yards and a touchdown, while Wallace Hoverton actually completed all of his passes. He goes 7 for 7 in that 4th quarter, and also threw for 90 yards over the course of the game. As for the ground game, we had a tough time getting that ground game established today, as McGriff was held to less than 4 yards a carry. However, Heath Whitehead was successful in finding the end zone today. Wallace Hoverton was able to have a carry for 5 yards, and then Over on the opposite side, this is what Eugene did with their rushing attack. Pretty similar to ours. Vincent Doom, the second-year quarterback out of Oregon State, he had 1 carry for 3 yards. As for receivers, we seem like we sprinkled the ball pretty well here today. No one had a crazy game, but DeAndre Bossier led the team in catches and yards today in this one. He had 4 catches for 45 yards. And then Grayson Heineck had our sole touchdown through the air today. He had a 38-yard touchdown grab. But yeah, really other than that, not too much to report here. Pretty not so busy day, but we spread the ball pretty well though. Defensively, what I will say is that we will have Jordan Baptiste lead the team in tackles. He had 14 tackles, so he was flying all over the field in this one. Dwight Cunningham, one of the corners that we brought in through free agency, also had plenty of tackles today. He had 9 total tackles over the course of this ball game. Just taking a look around and what has happened in terms of with the rest of our starters. Jeff Sharp, we gave him the opportunity to start in this one. He was okay. He had 3 tackles, but nothing too crazy to report here per se. But then looking for Paul Hitchens on the other hand, he only had 1 tackle, and he started at our middle linebacker position. So maybe someone to consider on that front going into the regular season. Got a couple of sacks. Jordan Baptiste and Greg Sharp were both able to get to the quarterback. And while we were not able to intercept the pass in this one, we did get a forced fumble from Jordan Baptiste. And that just so happened to be recovered by Cameron Spencer. So, I think our team is definitely going to take a step back. But at the same time, though, I still think we'll be a competitive football team. Alright, so even though we did end up with a loss to end the preseason, though, we did have a couple of guys get upgrades. Jonathan McGriff was one of those players, and we're going to continue to work on that elusive back upgrade just to make him a more complete player and a better fit for our system. And because of that, he does become an 82 overall with a +3 to juke move. Plus, he does have a superstar development now. That was something that he did acquire over the offseason, which we're pretty happy about. But then someone else who was getting an upgrade is Champ Johnson as well, who is fighting for, one of those, to be that wide receiver free. That is a consistent camp battle that we've been having on the offensive side of the ball. For him, we will work on his playmaker, and he now is a 72 overall following the upgrade. Actually gets a significant boost to his deep route running. That's a +5 there, though awareness and short route do get some bigger boosts as well, which we're pretty happy about. Alright, so in the preseason, while we were able to take down the Philadelphia Stars, we did lose close games against Michigan and Eugene, so we do finish the preseason 1-2. And now we take a look at our regular season schedule for the first time, and it actually is loaded with some primetime matchups. Yes, we will start the season out taking on Orlando, Evansville, and Arlington, which I don't think we've played the Arlington Renegades in quite some time in this series, so that should be some fun matchups. But then after that, we start with 5 primetime matchups, 4 of which are happening prior to the bye week. We'll take on Boston on the road, and then we'll have Pittsburgh at home on Sunday night. The Houston Roughnecks will play on the road on Sunday Night Football as well. And then for Monday Night Football in week number 8, we will have a rematch of both a regular season matchup as well as the AFC Championship game last season, where we will be taking on San Antonio. They are coming to our building this time around. Now, with that being said, the schedule gets a lot less compressed after that. We do have a road stand. We play Evansville, Tampa Bay, and Columbus on the road before we play Atlanta at home. And then this is where our final regular season matchup is in terms of primetime games, where we'll take on Pittsburgh on the road for Monday Night Football in week number 14. And then we'll round out our schedule with 3 of our 4 games being outside of our division. Not only our division, but all these 3 teams here, I believe, are all part of the NFC. So I think we're taking on the NFC South this year. I think that's who we're assigned for. But with that being said, that's going to round things up here. Next episode, I will play those first few games, and then we'll also cut down our 53-man roster, figure out, who is our new custom guys that are going to be joining the squad, right? So, a lot of things that we're looking forward to here in this episode, and I hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.